who wrote about politics, but I have since mutated and grown into something quite different and much bigger. I'm now a performer with millions of fans in America and beyond. I'm grateful for the tens of thousands of messages that I have received. And I look forward to making you all laugh, cry, and think for many, many decades to come.
If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Good luck with that. Here is my problem with this. This thing with the child sex, which is, the problem with child sex is that a child can't give consent. Okay, that is the problem with underage sex. Obviously, I'm not talking about real children. There's a whole different problem there. But I'm talking about people who are sexually developed but not mentally developed. I mean, every parent knows this. Your child develops physically before they develop mentally, and if you are an adult toying with a child, you are essentially raping them, and that's why they have those laws. And he says this. Milo says it. This is not my problem. This is not my problem with him. I may disagree with him. I may think he accidentally or purposely said something reprehensible. My problem with him is he has given shelter to, in the name of fighting political correctness, he has given shelter to evil. And I've said this repeatedly. I said this before this happened. I'm saying it now. His trolls went out and did things to Ben Shapiro that are not conscionable. They did them to David French too, about his kid. I think one or two of his children are black. David French is how they did these, and Milo went in and said, well, this is just the youth being rebellious, like as if they were like stuffing themselves in a phone booth or eating goldfish, I mean, even the rebellion of like Woodstock, where they're sitting around naked and smoking drugs, is not the same thing. People who are young and do not remember that this stuff is real. The Holocaust was real. Segregation was real. Stop for a minute, if you're so certain of yourself on this issue. Stop for a minute and think. Use your imagination what it would be like to explain to your child that he can't use a bathroom because of the color of his skin, that he can't go someplace because of the color of his skin. Imagine as a father or a mother explaining that to your 5-year-old son or daughter. Okay, this is a problem. These things really happened. Imagine watching your children, your family destroyed because their name ends with one vowel and with one consonant instead of another vowel, whatever it is. Imagine those things, and then you understand that sending pictures to Ben of gas chambers, or to David French of their kittens in gas chambers, it's not on. It's not on, okay? It's not just not PC. It's not just rebellion. It's wrong. And this is the problem with Milo. Listen, I have sympathy with Milo because I can see he's a damaged guy. I can see he's hurting. I think he is a guy that I think is probably at risk in a lot of different ways. And I can see that he's essentially got the heart of an artist and he's trying to find some kind of artistic personality. But it is not the public who forced him to go talk at CPAC, which essentially makes him a political figure. It is not the public who agreed to do that. He agreed to do it, and he stepped out of that artist role, and he got nailed for it. Now, look, if he comes back and he recreates himself and he says, I have to make an adjustment, I'll be there, okay? I hope he's that good a guy. We will find out. Just remember what your mom said, right? Your mom's ever tell you 2 wrongs don't make a right. Listen to your mom. That's the answer. 2 wrongs.
Record. That as anybody who has watched me for the past year knows, I am no fan of Milo's. I have not been a fan of Milo's, and I find Milo appalling, and I have for well over a year. I've stayed silent on this latest stuff because, honestly, you don't kick a guy while he's down. But the fact is that Milo, what's happened with Milo actually says less about Milo than it does about the conservative movement that I find troubling, right? I think that, just to give you a few examples of stuff that Milo's done over the past year, in a few weeks ago, he suggested to a Muslim girl in an audience that she shouldn't be wearing a hijab in America. As a guy who wears a funny hat every day of the week, I think that's awful, right? Milo's somebody who said that he called a Jewish journalist from BuzzFeed a thick as, what was it? It was a typical example of a sort of thick as pig shit media Jew. Right, Milo, on the day of my child's birth, sent me a meme of a black baby suggesting my kid was half black because I'm a cuck, because I'm not sufficiently supportive of Donald Trump. He's talked about how the alt-right is this wondrous milieu of intellectual decency and honesty, full of brilliant people, while openly acknowledging that the alt-right actually says that Western civilization and ethnicity are inherently connected. Right? He did all of this before all this stuff came down. So my only disappointment on all of this stuff is that, I think that conservatives should have said this is all bad stuff a long time ago. I don't think that it should have taken tape of Yiannopoulos saying that 30-year-olds having sex with 13-year-olds is great in order for people to say this was not great stuff. So if the only standard on the right is, we'll accept anyone who pisses off the left, our only standard is you can't say that it's good for 30-year-olds to have sex with 13-year-olds, I think we can have a little bit higher standards.
Thank you.
Fear. I mean, my fear is that we've reached such a reactionary point in American politics that it's going to be very difficult to draw back from the brink. So there's this idea that if something pisses off the left on the right, that thing must be good. I'm not going to name names here, okay? The idea that if something makes the left angry, this must be a good thing, okay? Two things can be true at once. It can piss off the left. It can also be not something that you want to be associated with or think is a good thing. And, you know, I think that on the left, it's the same thing. Well, if the right opposes it, it must be bad. If the right's for it, it must be, or if the right opposes it, it must be good. If the right's for it, it must be bad. I think that, yes, the first thing that we have to do is put aside the idea that we're going to use the shortcut of what does my enemy hate as a proxy for actual thinking. I wrote a column on this, it's going to come out in National Review tomorrow, and this is basically the idea of it. You know, I used an example from November. So here's the example I used from November. There's a massive college protest. I think this is in Louisiana, New Orleans, massive college protest against a speaker who says that he's a huge fan of Donald Trump, and he's going to vote for Donald Trump and stump for Donald Trump as hard as he can. Massive protest, mostly by black students in New Orleans. Police come and they pepper spray a bunch of people. Now, here's the question. The speaker, we can do a show of hands actually. The speaker, how many people think the speaker is bad? How many people think the speaker is good? Okay, how many people think you don't know enough to actually gauge whether the speaker is bad or good? That is the correct answer. Okay, you don't know enough. But the way that people respond to these things is, here's the situation, I don't like the people protesting, therefore the person must be good. And it's a good thing you said you don't know enough about the situation, because the speaker I'm specifically talking about is David Duke, right, who was protested at a college in New Orleans and said he was a big Trump supporter. He also happened to say that the media was run by Jews and all the rest of it. But, you know, the fact is that if we use our enemies as a proxy for thinking, we're not actually thinking. So the first thing we have to do is stop using our enemies as we're just going to bounce off what the enemy thinks. And then you're letting your enemy define you. You're letting your enemy define what you like and what you don't like. You should know what you like and what you don't like. You shouldn't have to wait for the Huffington Post to tell you what you're supposed to hate.
All right, thank you.